More on the People's House. Let me bring in Republican Congressman from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, Kevin McCarthy acknowledged the significant loss the GOP sustained in the suburbs, but he wouldn't pin the blame on the president. Of course, President Trump himself said, "Pretend I'm on the ballot," making it a referendum on Trump. Now, I get Republicans have to spin the loss publicly, but internally, do you think House Republicans got the message from the elections?
I think that remains to be seen, you know, and meeting with a lot of my colleagues this week, and we kind of try to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
You know, some people say, well, we didn't embrace Trump enough, and then some people say, well, you know, it's the tone of the president. I think it's the tone. I mean, I think, you know, when you look at a lot of, like, my district, for instance, very big supporters of President Trump, and he does very well in my district. But then you look at the district by mine, Randy Halkerin, Peter Roscom. There's no doubt, and I think we have to admit this, that suburban women are uncomfortable with the tone, even if they like the policies. And so I think as a party, you know, it's incumbent on us now as we go into this new being in the minority, I think, to really look inside and say, how are we talking about these issues? How are we selling them to the next generation? How is it, do we have a poverty agenda, for instance? Do we have an agenda to help restore human dignity? These are, I think, good conversations, and I'm hoping that, while I don't want to be in the minority, that it's maybe an opportunity to look inside.
But people like you have those conversations. People like Paul Ryan have those conversations. They speak very well, I think, about those issues. What can you do, though, especially now in the minority, when, you know, the guy at the top of the party, the guy in the Oval Office, doesn't really seem to care about tone?
Yeah, I mean, all I can do is be responsible for myself and how I speak. And I think, you know, and I've failed. I have crossed the red line in my tone before, and I'll probably do it again. But I try every day now, and I've recommitted this, to be aware of, you know, it's one thing to get in heated political arguments. It's one thing to say, you know, as an example, Democrats want to do bad things to health care. But it's a different thing to say Democrats or Republicans want to kill people or want to deny people, you know. And so how we talk about it, I think one of the greatest gifts we can give the next generation of people coming up now is restoring how we talk about things, how we debate. We can be passionate and fiery. John McCain was passionate and fiery. But he never lost respect for people, and people never lost respect for him. We need that gift back to the next generation of Americans, and I'm responsible for myself. I'll call out the president if I need to, and I'll support him every way I can. But, you know, that's where I hope we can spend the next couple of years getting back to.
So how do House Republicans plan to work with Democrats, and what are some of the issues you feel sanguine about finding some common ground?
Well, you know, it's really going to depend on the Democrats. You know, we're going to go right into a presidential election. So the question is, and I've dealt with this, I was in the class that took the majority, and there were a lot of people that just said, let's make, you know, our agenda now to make sure President Trump, or Obama at the time, doesn't get reelected. So, you know, the question is, do they want to work with Republicans on some things or just deny the president wins? That's only something they can answer, where I think we can have some impact. As was mentioned, infrastructure, but we have to figure out how to pay for that, and we have to figure out how to reform how we do infrastructure. I think job training, because there's low unemployment, but there's a lot of people that are mismatched with jobs available out there. So opioid crisis, of course, continues to be huge. So I think there's a lot of areas where we can get some success if we can put aside, which is the big if, you know, the next election-ism again that we always get into.
Right. You were really critical of the president for dancing on the graves of some of the House candidates that lost. One of those candidates was Mia Love. It turns out, latest reporting, she might win that race after all. What do you think the president should say about that, if anything?
Well, what I think he should say is call Mia and congratulate her when she's declared the winner. And I think, you know, realize that people like Mia, like Peter Roscom, Randy Halkerin, you know, a lot of our friends that lost, they didn't lose because they weren't embracing the president. They lost because it was a very tough year for them. And,
right.
you know, they put in a lot of hours to try to do what they think is right, even if somebody doesn't agree with their positions. Mia is a fantastic member of Congress. She's one of my favorite. I hope to God she comes back because she just does a great job, loves her district, loves her country, and really is the kind of story, when you hear her story, that the Republican Party ought to be embracing.
Right. I agree. I wonder if the president will hear that message and embrace her again. All right, Congressman Kinzinger, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Anytime. You bet.